کا زخمی ہے سر، کوئی نہیں تھا چہرے کے بل، وہ جب گرا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، آپ نے شب میں مجھ کو مدینے سے جب کوفہ بلوایا تھا، آپ کی پردے والی بیٹی بھولی نہیں جو سمجھایا تھا، دور وطن سے اب وہی زینب بے پردہ ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، نازوں سے جس کو پالا میں نے، وہ 18 سال کا اکبر، سینے پہ اپنے برچھی کھائے تڑپ رہا تھا گرم زمیں پر، ساتھ ہی اس کے مر جاتی میں، یہی دعا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، باپ سے بیٹی لپٹی ہوئی تھی، شمر نے بالوں سے جب کھینچا، مقتل میں ایک بے سر لاشا سامنے میرے تڑپ رہا تھا، ماں چکھا کر میری سکینہ نے جب کہا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بھائی حسن کی تھی وہ نشانی، نام تھا قاسم جس کا بابا، ہاتھ میں اس کی مہندی اٹھائے بیٹھی ہوئی ہے کب سے فروا، ہاں وہی قاسم ٹکڑے ہو کر بکھر گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے اے بابا، ہائے وہ میرا ننھا اصغر، پیروں پہ جو چل بھی نہ پایا، 3 دنوں کی پیاس میں اس نے سوکھ گلے پر تیر بھی کھایا، سر ہی نہیں نیزے پر اس کا بدن اٹھا ہے اے بابا، بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا زینب زینب ہے جب سے آئی گیا ہے علی بابا بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے علی بابا بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے علی بابا زینب زینب ہے جب سے آئی گیا ہے علی بابا بستہ بستہ یہ گھر میرا اجڑ گیا ہے علی بابا
تیرے بس میں سب کی بے بسی وہ صدا حل میں ہے تیری جو پکارتی ہے آج بھی جو پکارتی ہے آج بھی دور غموں کو کر دیتا ہے تیرا غم امام حسین امام حسین جانم امام حسین بے اثر جو زبر ہے اب بھی زیر کے جو جلال حق ہے معتبر جو جلال حق ہے معتبر شیر خدا کا شیر ہے تیرا زیغم امام بہار جانے عاشقاں سکون قلب مہرباں شہید عشق جاوداں تیرا درد بہرے بے قرار تیری غربتوں کی داستاں لکھے خون رنگ آسماں لکھے خون رنگ آسماں تیرا گھر ہے میری چشم پرنم امام حسین دل کی ہے آج آرزو مولا ہوں تیرے روبرو اشکوں سے آنکھیں باوضو کرتا ہوں قلب گفتگو تیرے لہو کا رنگ بو پھیلا ہو نور چار سو پھیلا ہو نور چار سو کاش ہو کرب و بلا کی گلیاں اور ہم امام حسین اے غریب دشت نینوا شہید عرض کربلا تیرے قرب نہر القما تیری پیاس پر ہے غمزدہ کہتے ہوئے ابن سیدہ تجھے رو رہی ہے خود قضا تجھے رو رہی ہے خود قضا زینب یہ کہہ کر کرتی ہے ماتم امام حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین زیر ستم تیرا ہے سر ہاتھ ہے شل غم ہے کمر خستہ دل جان جگر ریش تیری خون میں تر فکر ردا کا ہے اثر تجھ پہ قیامت کا گزر تیرے یاور نہ رہے قاسم و اکبر نہ رہے غازی دلاور نہ رہے حد ہے یہ اصغر نہ رہے رب کی قسم شاہ امام رب کا بھرم خون سے رقم دین دلام جان منا یاسر اور احمد کا دین محکم امام حسین
عجیب شور ہے کہ شور میں سکون ہے ہاں یہ شور ماتم ہے یہ سینے پر پڑنے والا ہاتھ یزیدیت کے رخسار پر تماچا ہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے.
حسین حسین مولا مولا حسین 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 مولا مولا حسین. ہاں کرو ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو.
فرش بچھا لو حلقہ بنا لو
فرش بچھا لو حلقہ بنا لو.
یہ کہہ رہا ہے
ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو.
یہ عزاداری تعزیہ-داری زہرا کے گھر سے ہے وفاداری. آنسو بہا کر نوحے سنا کر کرتے رہیں گے ہم پرسراری. جب تک ہماری سانسیں ہیں باقی
جب تک ہماری سانسیں ہیں باقی
دل سے یہ غم نہ ہوگا جدا.
ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو حسین حسین مولا مولا حسین 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 مولا مولا حسین.
جو ہمارے گھر پہ علم ہے شاہ وفا کا ہم پر کرم ہے. سائے میں اس کے ماتم کریں گے جتنا ہمارے سینوں میں غم ہے. فرش عزا کا بچھتا رہے گا
فرش عزا کا بچھتا رہے گا.
کہتے رہیں گے ہمیں صدا.
ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو.
یہ ماتمی جو حلقہ لگا ہے ٹھوک کے سینہ یہ کہہ رہا ہے ماتم سے ہم کو روکے نہ کوئی. زینب سے ہم نے وعدہ کیا ہے سینے پہ داغے ماتم سجا کے
سینے پہ داغے ماتم سجا کے
کرتے رہیں گے وفا.
ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو حسین حسین مولا مولا حسین 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 مولا مولا حسین.
کو اور ان کے غم کو بھول نہ جانا تم اس کرم کو. اہل حرم کو اور ان کے غم کو بھول نہ جانا تم اس کرم کو. جس نے خدا سے مانگا تھا غازی اس فاطمہ نے مانگا ہے ہم کو. ہے خوش نصیبی ہم ہیں حسینی
ہے خوش نصیبی ہم ہیں حسینی.
اور ہے دعائیں
ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا ماتم کرو. ہاں کرو ماتم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا مولا حسین کا
سن کر بچھاؤ ہم کا مسلح، حیا للذا حیا للذا، ہاتھ ہمارے بن کر نمازی کرتے رہیں گے سینے پہ سجدہ، بعد اقامت کرنا یہ نیت، بعد اقامت کرنا یہ نیت، قربت الی شاہ وفا، ختم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا، مولا حسین کا ختم کرو، کرو ختم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا، مولا حسین کا ختم کرو۔ قید ستم سے پا کے رہائی، ہر بی بی اپنے پیاروں کو روئی، قید ستم سے پا کے رہائی، ہر بی بی اپنے پیاروں کو روئی، اس وقت لیکن بیٹی علی کی بچوں کو اپنے بالکل نہ روئی، چھوٹے سے آئے دو سر جگائے، چھوٹے سے آئے دو سر جگائے، بیویوں سے زینب نے کہا کرو ختم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا، مولا حسین کا ختم کرو، کرو ختم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا، مولا حسین کا ختم کرو۔ گھر گھر میں ماتم کی جو صدا ہے، یہ احتجاج کرب و بلا ہے، باطل کے منہ پہ ہے یہ تماچا، اس نے ہی حق کو زندہ رکھا ہے، ذیشان ہم کو درویش ہم کو، ذیشان ہم کو درویش ہم کو، بیدار رکھتی ہے یہ صدا، ختم حسین کا زہرا کے چین کا، مولا حسین کا ختم کرو، کرو حسین حسین مولا، مولا حسین 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 مولا، مولا حسین۔ اصل میں یہی تو ہے یاد علی، ناد علی، اصل میں یہی تو ہے یاد علی، ناد علی، ناد علی، حسين والنعم الأمير، سرور فؤاد البشير النذير، علي وفاطمة والدة، فهل تعلمون له من نظير؟ له طلعة مثل الشمس الضحى، له غرة مثل بدر منير.
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین.
امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
میرے مالک سید و آقا، تیرا عشق ہے میرا کعبہ. میرے مولا حسین،
حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر. امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
تم ہی کائنات کے سلطان یا حسین. میرا ہر ایک حکم ہے قرآن یا حسین. مرضی تمہاری مرضی رحمان یا حسین. قربان تم پہ میرے دل و جان یا حسین. میری خلقت کا ہے تقاضا، کرو مجھ کو مار کے زندہ. میں کہوں گا حسین،
حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر. امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
دو جہاں کے سید و سردار یا حسین. دل میں دھڑک رہا ہے تیرا پیار یا حسین. چھوڑیں گے ہم نہ دامن اقدس تیرا کبھی. چل جائے چاہے حلق پہ تلوار یا حسین. تیرے عاشق کا ہے یہ وعدہ، تیرے نام پہ ہے مر جانا. شہنشاہ یا حسین، امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر. امیری حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر.
دل کر دیا امام نے خیمے کا جب دیا، فرمایا جس کو جانا ہے جائے وہ برملا. وعدہ رہا کہ اس کی شفاعت کروں گا میں. یہ لوگ میرے بھوکے ہی پیاسے ہے باخدا. ہر عاشق رو کے یہ بولا کوئی چھوڑ کے نہ جائے گا. تنہا حسین،
حسین امیری حسین امیری حسین ونعم الامیر. امیری
شوق میں نہ کسی کو بھی ہوش تھا، پروانہ بن کے کرتے تھے سب شاہ کا طواف، شبیر پر نثار ہر ایک سے فروش تھا دلوں میں عشق الہی، کہتا تھا ہر ایک سپاہی میرا قبلہ بادشاہ کے وہ بنا تم پہ ہو سلام، عمران اور حسن ہے ازل سے تیرے غلام، نوحے تمہاری یاد میں پڑھتے رہیں گے ہم، ہوگا بوقت نزع لب پہ تمہارا نام، میرا ورد ہے نام تمہارا، تیرا ذکر ہے میرا وظیفہ، میرا کلمہ حسین، امیری حسین، امیری حسین، امیری حسین ونعم الامیر، امیری حسین ونعم الامیر، دو جہاں کے سید و سردار یا حسین، دل میں دھڑک رہا ہے تیرا پیار یا حسین، چھوڑیں گے ہم نہ دامن اقدس تیرا کبھی، چل جائے چاہے
سجاد کے سجدوں کا واسطہ، الہی الہی سجاد کے سجدوں کا واسطہ،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا،
بیمار وطن فاطمہ صغرا کا واسطہ، معصوم کا یتیم سکینہ کا واسطہ، ڈوبا لب دریا ہو سفینہ کا واسطہ، اے میرے خدا شاہ مدینہ کا واسطہ،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا،
بیمار کی حالت ہے یہ دیکھی نہیں جاتی، میں کیا کروں غم سے میری بھر جاتی ہے چھاتی، بس یاد میں تیرے میں مصلا ہوں بچھاتا، جز تیرا نہیں کوئی میرا مونس و ساتھی،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا،
کرتا ہوں دعا رب سے میں یا حضرت سجا، ہے آسرا تمہارا تم ہی کیجیے ادا، ہے کون میرا جس سے کروں جا کے میں فریاد، امداد طلب ہے میری تم کیجیو امداد،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا،
بیماروں کے لیے تیرا یہ ذکر شفا ہے، ہر اسم تیرا ان کے لیے ایک دوا ہے، تو کن فیکون ہے سو تیرے در کی عطا ہے، تو چاہے تو ایک پل میں ہی ان سب کی شفا ہے،
یا رب بیمار کرب و بلا کا ہے واسطہ، جو ہے مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا، الہی سجاد کے سجدوں کا واسطہ، سجاد کے سجدوں کا واسطہ،
امام حسین جانا امام حسین،
عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین، عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین،
تیرے عاشق آدم ہو خاتم امام حسین،
عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین، عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین،
وقار شان بندگی قرار روح زندگی، تو وسائل جان بے کسی، تیرے بس میں سب کی بے بسی، وہ صدا حل میں ہے تیری جو پکارتی ہے آج بھی، جو پکارتی ہے آج بھی، دور غموں کو کر دیتا ہے تیرا غم امام حسین،
عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین، عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین،
ہے انبیاء کا خیال تو، ہے وارث بے مثال تو، بلغ العلا بکمال تو، شفت دجا بجمال تو، حسن جمیع خصال تو، صلو علیہ وآل تو، صلو علیہ وآل تو، جان درود پیغمبر ہے تیرا دم امام حسین،
عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین، عشقم امام حسین، جانم امام حسین،
وجود شاہ کربلا دلیل نور کبریا، کریم تو ہے با خدا جو اگر بجھا دے ایک دیا، کئی سورجوں کا قافلہ پکارتا ہے ہم فدا، پکارتا ہے ہم
على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فإذا استويت أنت ومن معك على الفلك فقل الحمد لله الذي نجانا من القوم الظالمين. وقل رب أنزلني منزلا مباركا وأنت خير المنزلين. إن في ذلك لآيات وإن كنا لمبتلين. ثم أنشأنا من بعدهم قرنا آخرين فأرسلنا فيهم رسولا منهم أن اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون. وقال الملأ من قومه الذين كفروا وكذبوا بلقاء الآخرة وأترفناهم في الحياة الدنيا ما هذا إلا بشر مثلكم يأكل مما تأكلون منه ويشرب مما تشربون. ولئن أطعتم بشرا مثلكم إنكم إذا لخاسرون. أيعدكم أنكم إذا متم وكنتم ترابا وعظاما أنكم مخرجون. هيهات هيهات لما توعدون. إن هي إلا حياتنا الدنيا نموت ونحيا وما نحن بمبعوثين. إن هو إلا رجل افترى على الله كذبا وما نحن له بمؤمنين. قال رب انصرني بما كذبون. قال عما قليل لا يصبحن نادمين. فأخذتهم الصيحة بالحق فجعلناهم غثاء. فبعدا للقوم الظالمين. ثم أنشأنا من بعدهم قرونا آخرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Wednesday, 10th July 2024, Eve of 4th Muharram 1445. Kindly keep your mobile phones on silent during the program. Always keep your belongings with you at all times. Daily program information can be found on our website or via our WhatsApp messaging service. Muharram Majlis sponsorship scheme is £1,000 per night. Those wishing to sponsor either in part or full, please contact Brother Arif Punjani or Brother Sajad Tajani in the gents, or the chair lady Doreen Hirji in the ladies or Jamaat office. Muharram Niyaz Fund is open. Please donate generously at the Treasury desk. We urge all attendees to be mindful when exiting the marquee, especially when there are large crowds. Additionally, we have limited wall and chair spaces, so please do keep these spaces free for the less able and those that require it the most. Ahsant. We'll now have a poem by Brother Ramiz Naqvi. Please welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. My dear brothers, sisters, respected Shaykh, Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to begin by sending my sincerest condolences to you all upon these nights of mourning. I've written a short poem in honor of Hazrat Hurr, a symbol of the purest form of repentance and proof that divine mercy truly is limitless. The poem is based on the narration describing how when the enemies of Imam Hussein, when they saw Hazrat Hurr making his decision to switch sides to the camp of Imam Hussein, they saw him shaking. And they asked him what he was doing, what such a brave soldier, why he was shaking. And he said that he was deciding between heaven and hell. This poem is written from the perspective of Hazrat Hurr in his final moments. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As I walk my soul towards my Lord, I choose heaven. As day became night, and then day, and then night, I heard heaven calling me by my name, calling me to be free. For the warmth I was approaching was not heavenly, and the burning earth served to remind that every step I take away from him, my hereafter would hereby be assigned. I can see myself between heaven and hell, between those who live by his words and those who his words repel, between those who guide and are guided and those who are strapped with chains up to their chin, for between the sons of those who taught the Quran and the sons of mothers cursed within, I see myself between heaven and hell, and I choose heaven. For with my name came the duty to be free. For my mother made no mistake in how she named me, yet I would lead thousands of unshackled captives, thinking we were free. As our lips were the ones damp and our stomachs full, yet when they would hear the sounds of oppression, they would still utter God's praise. When they would hear the sounds of oppression, they would utter God's praise, but a praiseworthy scene Ibn Ziyad and his company could not find. So I concluded I was sided with the deaf, dumb and blind. May my mother mourn that state of mine. Though time passed and I'd see Ibn Ziyad itching for blood, unbeknownst to him that the flowers of revolution were in bud, and they would feed and seed upon the holy bloodshed. And I came to these grounds a constrained pacifist, but damned would I be if this belief spread. Like the sun and the moon, orbiting and rotating under no will of their own. I shackled my wrists and lowered my head, guiding myself to follow the sound of supplication. I walk to his camp, my voice lowered. I dare not speak in fluid tone, knowing that I would be met by the dry, coarse sounds of thirst. I spoke words of forgiveness. I spoke words of forgiveness until forming sentence, extinguishing the threat of the fire with tears of repentance. I told my master Hussein that I lost sight of this world. I told my master Hussein that I lost sight of this world, and for heaven I had planned after he quenched my thirst with the water from his hand. For now I have tasted the fountain of Kauthar. So how can I again be satisfied? But God had dignified humankind, and certainly he purified your kin. For God had dignified humankind, and certainly he purified your kin. So why would you let my horses drink before you would even begin? Answers I have but few. I distanced myself from the disbelief in my limbs. I distanced myself from the disbelief in my limbs and the weakness in my past morals as I entered into the light of Him, as I sided with one half of heaven's pearls and corals. I brought my son with me, knowing he too had sons who would be slain. And despite the fact that I had funneled them into this land, he hesitated not to approach and hold my dying son's hand. I lay struck on the battlefield in your presence aboard, a free man, but firmly a slave to your Lord, for I saw my body being collected by my tribe. I saw the sinner's body being sought whilst the purest were left amongst rubble and stones. My mind would yell, "Take not my body, for I wish to be crushed amongst these bones." For I obtained proximity to Hussein and his Lord for mere hours. For I obtained proximity to Hussein and his Lord for mere hours upon this plain. Let me not taste the bitterness of that distance again. I was between heaven and hell, and I chose the path illuminated well. The path lined with martyrs and the pious and the God-fearing, the straight path to heaven. For when I found myself between heaven and hell, I chose Hussein. And by his side, I wish to forever remain. I chose heaven, I chose Hussein. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ahsant. Before we begin Marthia, brothers, can I kindly ask you to stand up and move as far forward as possible, as we're expecting a big turnout tonight. Please do so with a loud salawat. We'll now have a Marthia by Brother Abbas Datu. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
Salawat. In Karbala he sacrificed everything he had. In Karbala he sacrificed everything he had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, What a mighty heart your Hussein had. Who would have thought one afternoon is all that it would take for Hussein to sacrifice his house for Allah's sake? His body in a state that we can't even comprehend. Imam Sajjad watched helplessly the women to defend Allah. What a mighty heart your Hussein had, Allah. What a mighty heart your Hussein had. He heard Abbas's call and towards him he raced. What could prepare him for the scene that he was going to face? All that he could see was the dampness on the sand before. His arms were lying helplessly scattered upon the floor. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Now it was the turn of Akbar to go and boldly fight. The spear hit his chest and the pain it did ignite. His call was answered by Hussein, who found him on the sand. How hard it was to pull the spear out with the father's hands. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. His family lay about the sand, for help he did call. The only one to answer it was his infant so small. He takes the baby in his arms, his lips are dry with thirst. The mother watches from her tent, let Hurr be cursed. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. He's bringing back the baby, will his pain not decrease? He's lost his little soldier and his heart has lost its peace. The sand rejects his blood and the sky spurns it too. What strength does it require to see his mission through? Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Allah, what a mighty heart your Hussein had. Salawat.
Ahsant. We'll now have another Marthia by Brother Suhail Rajabali. Please kindly welcome him with the salawat.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. करने को दुआ रब से मैं हाथ उठाती हूँ. आमीन कहो बच्चों, आमीन कहो बच्चों. करने को दुआ रब से मैं हाथ उठाती हूँ. आमीन कहो बच्चों, आमीन कहो बच्चों. खैमों में तराई को لانے کا ارادہ ہے، عباس کا وعدہ ہے، عباس کا وعدہ ہے، وعدہ ہو نبھائیں گے، میں تم کو بتاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو۔ وہ پیاس کا عالم ہے، لب کھولا نہیں جاتا، کچھ بولا نہیں جاتا، کچھ بولا نہیں جاتا، میں حرف دعا اپنے اشکوں کو بناتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو، کرنے کو دعا رب سے میں ہاتھ اٹھاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو۔ پانی جو میں قسمت سے تھوڑا سا بھی پاؤں گی، اصغر کو پلاؤں گی، اصغر کو پلاؤں گی، بس ایک دعا لب پر رو رو کے میں لاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو، کرنے کو دعا رب سے میں ہاتھ اٹھاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو۔ خیموں میں ترائی کو لانے کا ارادہ ہے، عباس کا وعدہ ہے، عباس کا وعدہ ہے، وعدہ ہو نبھائیں گے، میں تم کو بتاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو، کرنے کو دعا رب سے میں ہاتھ اٹھاتی ہوں، آمین کہو بچو، آمین کہو بچو۔ الفاتحہ۔ صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد۔
Brothers, before we begin lecture, I'd like to kindly ask you again if you could stand up and move as far forward as possible with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we begin with the lecture, I'd like to announce that we will inshallah be having a short question and answer session with Shaykh Mahdi Rastani on his lectures to date, straight after Marthia before Salatul Maghribeen. We thank Shaykh for his time, and we pray inshallah that will be beneficial for us all. Please submit your questions on slido.com with the code HUJJAT. Please now welcome Shaykh Mahdi Rastani on his topic, engaging with Western customs with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
For all of your marhumin and marhumat, the sponsors of tonight's program, Suratul Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء فلنولينك قبلة ترضاها فول وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام وحيثما كنتم فولوا وجوهكم شطره وإن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ليعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وما الله بغافل عما يعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is one that directly correlates with our lives in this part of the world, engaging with Western customs and non-religious holidays. As the days and the months pass throughout the year, every single year as we come across non-religious holidays, different types of holidays that we come across, there is always a raging debate, a very hot debate online. And this has to do with whether we are allowed to celebrate these different holidays and commemorate these different holidays, because many of them are non-religious holidays. You will find on this topic, people will get very heated online. If you take the example of Christmas, for example, you will find one group of Muslims online will tell you that if you were to celebrate Christmas, you were to have a Christmas tree in your house, There's nothing wrong with this. At the end of the day, Christmas is also supposed to be the birth of the Holy Prophet Isa alayhi salam. This is one group. They'll tell you celebrating it is not a big deal. Maybe we can put an Islamic color on it, an Islamic touch to it as well. This is one group. All the way on the other side, you will find another group of Muslims will turn to you, and if you have a Christmas tree in your house, you are now the worst of people who ever walked on earth. This is the two extremes that we find on this issue, and many other non-religious holidays. And therefore, the question comes to mind, what is supposed to be my duty with regards to these holidays? But tonight's topic wants to go beyond just the holidays that we deal with, and also discuss the non-religious customs and practices that we deal with in the society that we live in, the way people get married, the way people raise their children, the way people interact with one another, the way people come together and gather and they spend time together. Every single one of these comes with its own culture in this society. And therefore, the question that comes to mind is, am I allowed to engage in these different customs and practices, many of which do not have religious roots? They are roots that have to do with the society that I'm living in. It might be British culture, it might be American culture, it might be Canadian culture, whatever the case might be. Therefore, this issue of non-religious customs and practices is a very important issue that we have to delve into. And to add to the complexity of this, you find in the message of the Holy Prophet and in the teachings of the Holy Prophet that the Prophet didn't just bring for us do's and don'ts. The Prophet didn't just bring for us halal and haram. He also introduced certain concepts that one might be able to call part of Islamic culture and Islamic identity. Today, when we use the word culture in this lecture, we mean it in a positive way, not in the negative way where we say culture versus religion. In tonight's talk, when we say culture, we're referring to Islamic culture. You find elements of this, things that are not necessarily wajib, they're not necessarily haram, but they're part of your Islamic identity and part of your Islamic culture. For example, the culture of going to the masjid, attending Salatul Jama'ah. If you didn't attend Salatul Jama'ah, you did not commit a sin. But certainly when you look at the teachings of the Prophet, this was part and parcel of what he would refer to as Islamic culture, Islamic identity. The culture of dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for things. This is not wajib per se, but it is part of your culture and your identity. The concept of ziyarah, and the list continues and goes on. But the problem is, when I live in this society, these are not the concepts I am dealing with. The practices and the concepts I'm dealing with are non-religious practices and non-religious holidays and non-religious customs. Hence, the question is, how am I supposed to interact with these different customs and practices? Today, inshallah, we'll take some time to delve into this topic, and we'll do so by posing the following questions. Number one, what Islamic practices, what Islamic customs did the Holy Prophet bring for us that was then being put part of our Islamic culture and our Islamic identity, even though Islam does not necessarily consider them wajib to act on? Number two, what is it? Why does Islam show importance to cultural icons like Maqam Ibrahim when you go to Mecca or you go for Hajj, or Al-Hajar al-Aswad, for example? Or why did the Quran even change the Qibla to a Qibla that would only belong to the Muslims and would become part of their culture and identity, and change their Qibla from praying towards Masjid al-Aqsa and Jerusalem? Number three, what is Islam's approach when it comes to non-religious holidays, non-religious customs, non-religious practices? Should I fully assimilate and become part of society in the sense of the word? Or should I completely keep my distance and only practice Islam with those elements that are fully Islamic and have roots fully rooted in Islam? Number four or five, what are the two governing principles that I have to keep in mind when I'm engaging with non-religious customs, cultures, and holidays? And number six, and finally, what is an example of a custom and a practice that many of our youth today have begun to adopt, that the values it promotes do not necessarily mesh with the values of Islam, though it may not be haram per se. Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. When we look into the teachings of our beloved Prophet, what you find is that the Prophet didn't just bring halal and haram. There were many other things that the Prophet also brought forth that would essentially build what we would refer to as Islamic culture or Islamic identity. An example of this is dua. How many narrations and how many verses of the Quran speak of this idea of dua, and not just doing dua every now and then, but the idea that dua is supposed to be part and parcel of your life constantly, yes? When we read this in narrations, doesn't Hadith Qudsi say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa, even if you need salt for the soup or the food that you are consuming, ask me for the salt. This means dua is part and parcel of your culture as a whole. Coming to the masjid, how many narrations speak of this idea? Whether it's for praying, whether it's for reciting Quran, whether it's for gaining knowledge, this is part of what the masjid was for back in the day. Unfortunately, today, many of our masajid are not viewed in this way, yes? But back in the day, this is how it was. How many narrations speak of this? This is an element of your Islamic culture. And this is why you find there are certain elements that though you might look at them from far away and think, what benefit does this have in my life? And why does Islam emphasize this cultural icon so much? But when you look deeper, it's because Islam views that thing as a cultural icon. It represents a culture. This is how important culture is for Islam. Of those items is Maqam Ibrahim. What is Maqam Ibrahim? Obviously, we all know Maqam Ibrahim are the footsteps of Ibrahim that have sunk into a piece of a rock or a stone in Mecca. There's dispute among scholars. Was this when Ibrahim was building the Kaaba and his footsteps sunk into the stone? Or was it after he had built the Kaaba and he was calling people to come and attend the Hajj, perform the Hajj? This is dispute. Nonetheless, Maqam Ibrahim, 2 footsteps that have sunk into a piece of stone. You might look at it from far away. Many of our children might look at it from far away and say, what's the importance of this? He was standing somewhere, it sunk in. But the Quran 2 times mentions Maqam Ibrahim and says when you go there, you should pray there. وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. When you go there, Maqam Ibrahim has quite a bit of value. It's quite important. Why? Because Islam sees it as a cultural icon. Because when you see the footsteps of Ibrahim, it represents a culture. It's 2 footsteps, but it represents thousands of words. Represents Tawheed. Represents the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Represents you standing out and standing firm on the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you. And many other things. This is why you find even in the narrations when our beloved 12th Imam, Al-Imam Sahib al-Zaman, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When he begins his movement, what do the narrations say over and over again? And these are narrations that are found in even the Sunni hadith corpus as well. That he will start his movement from the Kaaba, mustanidan ila al-Kaaba, while he is leaning on the Kaaba, and people will give bay'ah to him where? بين الركن والمقام. Between the corner that carries Hajar al-Aswad of the Kaaba and al-Maqam or Maqam Ibrahim. This much importance Maqam Ibrahim has. Why? It's just 2 footsteps, yes. But it's a cultural icon. It represents a lot of things. You move on to Hajar al-Aswad itself. Why does the Prophet come and he swipes at Hajar al-Aswad? He wipes Hajar al-Aswad. You know, in the Sunni school of thought, the most hardcore Salafi scholars will tell you there's no idea of tabarruk and things of this nature, except when it comes to Hajar al-Aswad. Even the Prophet wiped al-Hajar al-Aswad, yes? This is the far right, yes, of the Salafi movement. They'll tell you, yes, this one, the Prophet did when he came to. Why? What's the point of some black rock in the corner of the Kaaba? It's a cultural icon. It represents a different world altogether. So these cultural icons were very important for the Holy Prophet. Then you add to this the issue of the Qibla. What's the problem with the Muslims praying towards Jerusalem? In fact, if you think about it, most of the life of the Prophet, he prayed towards Jerusalem compared to praying towards Medina or praying towards Mecca. 13 years he was in Mecca. 13 years he was praying towards where? Jerusalem. Only when the Prophet came to Medina did the Qibla then change. Well, how many years was he in Medina? 10 or so years, yes? So most of his life he's actually prayed towards where? Jerusalem. I know this is a fact that might be a little, difficult for us to digest. But most of the life of the Prophet he's prayed towards Jerusalem. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. We see the way you're looking at us. You're awaiting something. What's this concern that the Prophet is carrying? Why is he looking late at night into the sky, awaiting revelation? He's awaiting revelation because this Qibla is now set in such a way where non-Muslims and others who have wrong intentions in their heart, they come and they say, you don't have an identity of your own. You don't have a culture of your own. You don't have roots of your own. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا. We will have you face a qibla that will please you. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. You face towards Mecca and Masjid al-Haram. And the verses continue. And he said, وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. And the people of the book, when you face in this direction, they will know very well that this is one of the signs of the final prophet. They will know that you are carrying the truth with you. All of this what? For what? The identity, the culture of the Muslim Ummah. Therefore, culture and identity became very important in the life of the Prophet and in the teachings of Islam. Okay, wonderful. But the problem is, in the societies we live in, these are not the cultures and customs and practices that we find around ourselves. We find non-religious holidays, non-religious practice, non-religious customs. How am I supposed to go about engaging with these customs and culture? Aloud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Typically, when it comes to this issue, the first question that you and I ask is this. I want to engage in this practice, in this custom, in this holiday. The first question that comes to mind is it halal or is it haram? Yes, that should be the first question you ask. That's a very good question. I wish more people would ask that question. So they ask, let me email Ayatollah Sistani, sistani.org. Yes. Christmas has come around. The community is having a big debate. Can we have this tree? Can we not have this tree? Yes. When you go to the maraji', brothers and sisters, they will tell you what is halal and what is haram. And that's very important. And that is the most fundamental thing out of everything. But then beyond that, we also have to look at certain principles as well. Because certain things may not be haram for you today. But if you continue down that road 10, 15, 20 years, it can lead to places where you do in fact end up committing haram. You know what it's like? It's like going to a doctor and saying, sir, can I have this burger today? He says, yes, you can have this burger. Say, what about tomorrow? Can I have a burger tomorrow? Says, yeah, you can have a burger. Is there any day that you will ask a doctor and he'll say, you know what, having a burger this day is haram, it's not allowed for you, it's impermissible? No. But if you have a burger for 10 years, what's going to happen to you? You're not going to last that long. And your life is going to be in jeopardy. I know this is news to some of these brothers here, yes? But your life is going to be in jeopardy. So I ask Ayatollah Sistani, Ayatollah Khamenei, all the maraji', I ask them, what is the ruling on engaging in these holidays, for example? They will tell you two main principles, yes? It's a very important question. Principle number one, they'll say engaging in any custom and practice or holiday that is practiced and celebrated in a way that another faith celebrates it in. This is haram. If I celebrate Christmas the way a Christian does it, yes, I put this tree, then there's a cross, all these elements that belong to a different faith. If I celebrate it in that way, yes, the maraji' will tell you what? This is haram. You're not allowed to engage in this. This is definitely a red line. This is principle number one we have to keep in mind. Principle number two, they'll say, listen, even if that celebration, that holiday, that custom does not belong to another culture, meaning culture, another faith, yes? Still, you have to see how you're celebrating this commemoration. If you do it in a way that involves other sins happening, it is also haram. So I'm celebrating Christmas. I'm not doing it in a way that engages other faiths. but I'm doing it in a way where I've put together a party. Of course, in this party, haram things are happening. The Maraja will tell you definitely what? This is haram. These are the two basic principles when it comes to holidays, but then beyond that, even in custom and culture, these are the elements that you have to pay attention to. Okay, great. But many of the customs that we take part in, neither of these two would apply to them. I'm taking part in Mother's Day. I'm taking part in this gathering, for example. Yes? It doesn't belong to any other faith. And it's not being done in a way that it consists of other sins. Because it's halal, does that mean I should fully assimilate and have my family fully assimilate? Or does Islam have other teachings here? This is where the crux of our discussion is. The answer is you are not supposed to fully assimilate here. There's more details. There's more teachings that Islam has in this regard. Though it may not necessarily be haram, but you have to be cautious about it, especially because you're raising a family and children in a society where they are bombarded with other cultures other than Islamic culture. They're already getting the brunt of it. So you have to now be extra cautious when it comes to this matter. So you say, okay, Shaykh, so it's not haram to engage in these holidays. So what's the concern then? Let me go ahead and engage in these holidays, in these customs. Well, there's two more principles you have to pay attention to. The first of which we will get to. Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The first of those is this holiday that you're engaging in. This custom or practice that you're engaging in, even if it's not haram, what type of values is it promoting in your house? What values is it pushing in your house? What type of things is it promoting when it comes to your family and your children? What we're talking about today, brothers and sisters, it applies to adults, all ages. But now if you have children and you're raising a family, this is times 2, times 3. Everything I say right now, if you are trying to raise a family, if you have children, this is times 2, times 3 emphasis on this discussion. The first principle when I want to engage in a Western or Eastern non-Islamic practice and culture is what? What type of values is it promoting? Not all holidays are the same. Not all non-religious customs are the same. I'll give you an example. Of non-religious holidays, you have Mother's Day. And of non-religious holidays, you have Christmas. Are these two the same? They're not the same. There's a world of difference between them. Of non-religious holidays, you have Father's Day. Of non-religious holidays, and I'm being frank, you have Valentine's Day. Are these two the same? No, they're not the same. The values that they promote, are they the same? Not even close. One of them promotes that you're supposed to thank your father, your mother, who you normally don't think. That's one value. The other one promotes relationships, many of which are haram, if not all. Are these two the same? No, the values they promote are very different. I, as a Muslim, have to be very selective and thoughtful. Now, if someone engaged in that non-religious holiday once or twice, is it haram? No, haram and halal is in the hands of the Maraja. Whatever the Maraja say, you take it. Yes? But in the long run, I have to be very cautious what type of values I'm bringing into my household. Because yes, it may not be anything haram today, but down the road, what type of values are my children going to be grown up with? What type of values are my children going to be brought up with? This is very important. I'll just mention this personal note here. Yes, brothers and sisters? Sometimes speakers talk about this topic. They're talking about it more from a theoretical perspective. Personally, I say this humbly, I'm not speaking about this from a theoretical perspective. I work with families, I work with communities. I've seen the impact that non-religious culture has on a family. When I'm talking about this topic, it's coming from years of experience and hundreds of messages from families. So when I talk about this is a different take than just the theory of what we find in the books. Yes? Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I have to see what type of values is this non-religious custom or practice bringing into my household. New Year's is one thing, Christmas is another thing. Even though for us it might be 5 days apart, they're not the same. They have different values that they promote. In today's world, Christmas, It might promote good values too. We're not saying it's all evil and bad, and no. But it promotes certain values like being commercial and capitalism, and you have to buy a million things and spoiling your children and this and that. New Year's might represent other things, good or bad. So I have to be very thoughtful, very selective in how I approach the customs I want to get involved in. Of those customs that you find today, brothers and sisters, many of our youth are adopting when it comes to the issue of marriage. And they don't look beyond it to see what type of values is this issue promoting. Is when it comes to the proposal. Nowadays, mashallah, you find Muslims. Yes, this Muslim man is getting married to this Muslim lady. Yes, brother, sister, they're getting married. Okay, wonderful, alhamdulillah. But then now he has to get down on one knee. They have to have this picture. Yes. Why? Because they've grown up in a society, and I've grown up in a society where if you go online, some of the videos that have the highest views of all are videos of what? Are videos of proposals. Because this young man proposes to this young woman, and you have to see the reaction that this young woman has. Oh my gosh, she's jumping up and down and tears of joy coming down her eyes, and she doesn't even know what to do, and she's screaming, and oh, I had a feeling this was coming. And now our youth see this and they say, oh, well, this is such a beautiful moment. And in some senses, it is a beautiful moment. Don't get me wrong, yes? But what this youth doesn't understand, you and I don't understand, is if you peel away at this moment a little bit more, you will see the values that are being promoted in this type of an action. May not even be haram, by the way. But what values is it promoting? Why do you think that young lady, that young woman, is jumping up and down and there's tears leaving her eyes and she's screaming out of joy? You know why? She's so happy. Because there was a chance this would never happen. Because this was not promised. In other words, this young man that she was spending time with, sometimes for years, had never cared enough to make a commitment to her. And there was no promise that he ever would do that. There's no guarantee. So after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, he might just get up one day, say, well, I found someone better, so, khatam, it's over. I'm just going to move on with my life. You deal with the heartbreak, and you deal with all the headache, and you deal with putting together the different pieces of your life. I'm just going to move on. There was a chance of that. That was a reality. Why? Because in the culture where this young woman is living her life, there is no sense of if a young man comes forward, he has to make a commitment to me. There's no promise. It's just whatever he likes. If one day he feels like it, you might get lucky and he might commit to you. Or he might break your heart like the hearts of thousands are broken every year. So she's jumping up and down and so on and so forth. Now you think a Muslim girl, when she's proposed to, she has this reaction? No, that's not the reaction that she has. Why? Because she knows it's coming. And our youth think, it would have been so much better if it was a surprise. No. You want it to be known that this is coming because you want him to understand from the very beginning that he has to make a commitment to you. You're not wasting your time. You're not wasting your emotions. You're not here for heartbreak. You're here to see if someone is mature enough to take on the responsibility of building a family with them. It should be known from the very beginning. Of course, when this Muslim woman is getting married, it's not a surprise to her. Of course, why? Because they had all of these steps that came before this issue of the proposal. Yes? First, there was the rishta. Then after the rishta, there was the badbaki. And then after that, there was, Mindi and Dolki, and some of these apparently are sisters-only sessions, and so on and so forth, yes? All of this until the wedding, and then the walim. There's 7 or 8 steps, mashallah. Yes, she wasn't surprised. But if you're not surprised that this young man is proposing to you, that's an amazing thing. Because from the very beginning, you've set the standard that if you come and approach me, and your family has set the standard that if you come and approach me, we're not here to waste time. We're here to find the person that we're going to live with for the next 60, 70, 80 years of our lives. But this young Muslim girl, young Muslim boy, in their own innocent understanding, they say, no, but we want that moment. So now they take that picture and it says, you act like you're surprised. We'll take that picture and then, we'll post it. You have to be thoughtful. We have to be thoughtful of, in terms of what values am I promoting? It may not even be haram. Nobody's making that claim. But what values am I bringing? Yes? This is principle number 1. When I engage in non-religious customs, practices, and holidays. Aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Principle number 2. Even if the custom, the practice that I am engaging in is not haram, it doesn't even promote the wrong values. This is important, brothers and sisters. Non-religious culture and customs should never become the default in my household. They should always be secondary to Islamic culture. I have to keep that balance in a very careful way. Yes, Mother's Day is a thing. Yes, but it should be always secondary to the Islamic version, to the Islamic culture. The exposure of myself and my family to non-religious holidays, customs, cultures, practices, if it happens with the selectiveness that we talked about before, it should never become the dominant thing in my house. No. A child that's raised where the dominant culture is non-Islamic culture, be it Western or Eastern, doesn't matter at this point where you live in the world. Western or Eastern, when he wants to relate to his life, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will struggle. I'll share a very short story, yes? I read a book once for my son, yes? 5, 6 years old, read a book, yes? And the book was about cars. I thought, when you pick up a book about cars, this is the safest possible thing that you can find. I mean, cars, what else is there that could come out of this? So you pick up the book, the cars are racing, yes? There's a male car, there's a female car. Now, of course, today, even with human beings, we can't figure this out, apparently. But somehow the cars, we already know, yes? There's a male car, there's a female car. The male car comes to race. Pay attention, it's very important. The male car comes to race. The female car, what does she do? She comes into the track and she starts posing. All the cameras zoom in on her and the male car forgets about the race. And he is mesmerized by the female car. He's just his tongue, hanging out of his mouth and, oh my God. And this female car is just flaunting her beauty, so to speak, yes? Everyone, pictures in the spotlight and all of this kind of stuff. So what happens? The female car wins. The male car completely out of it at this point. If my child is being raised with this culture, then she's 16, 17, 20, 25, and I tell her, oh, that beauty you have to cover it up. That's only for certain time. It's going to be difficult for her to relate to this because the thing that she was relating to all along was what? I'm supposed to flaunt my beauty. I'm supposed to make it available to everybody. Same examples with men as well. The ideas and the values that our men are being raised with today. That yes, you're growing up, you're a man, you have certain desires, you're supposed to act on them. It's not a problem. This is who you are. A man will always be a man. These types of nonsensical things that we hear. If the dominant culture in my household becomes non-religious customs and practices, when I want to pull my child away and point him in the direction of Islam, I won't say it's impossible, but you've made things difficult for him. If my child isn't raised with the culture of Islam, and he grows up, he might even be very successful financially, business-wise, career-wise, whatever the case might be. Then I tell him, okay, now you have to drop everything. You have to go for Hajj. He's going to say, no, I'm about to be promoted. What are you talking about, Hajj? Because this was the norm for him. It's not his fault. It's your fault. It's my fault. Is he evil? Is he a terrible person? No, he was raised with this culture. The culture he was raised with was the most important thing in life is your career. Sometimes even more important than the relationship you have with your wife or your husband. This is the culture he was raised with. If the culture he was raised with is everything about me, which is what the dominant culture is today in society, then you tell him, okay, now you have to sacrifice. You have to wake up 5 o'clock in the morning and you have to pray and you have to do. So what are you talking about? This is what I'm used to. This is the culture that I've been raised with. Even if the culture, brothers and sisters, is not haram at the first level, at the second level doesn't promote the wrong values, at the third level, it can never become the dominant culture in my household. There are some elements have to stay in the culture of my household because it gives myself and my children the best possible chance of moving in the direction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the religion of Islam want them to move in as they go through the different stages of life. This is why the Prophet brought for us some gems. The Prophet brought for us elements that would become part of our Islamic culture. What are some of those elements? The first of those that unfortunately has not been established well within our household is the idea and the concept of praying salat and praying salatul jama'ah. Why do you think salatul jama'ah, the Prophet emphasized this so much? Because it was supposed to become part of your culture, part of your identity. And we all know that there are other schools of thought, they've done a better job with this particular element. We all know this. Salatul Jama'ah is part of culture. Some households you go in, adhan goes off, and everyone just moves on with life as if it's nothing. As if nothing even happened. Of those elements the Prophet brought forth for us was Salatul Jama'ah. This needs to be a thing in your house. You know when something becomes very prominent somewhere, they say it's a thing now. Yes? Salatul Jama'ah is supposed to be a thing in your house. In my house. It's supposed to be something my children understand. Everybody understands. Now, yes, sometimes there's emergencies. Things come up. We all understand that, yes? But the norm has to be when the alarm clock goes off, we're going to go pray. Ideally, all of us together. If not all of us together, then maybe some now, some later. The idea is this is the norm. The second of those elements the Prophet brought forth to make it part of our culture, though it's not wajib per se, recitation of Quran. Recitation of Quran was supposed to be part and parcel of our culture. Why do you think we have all these narrations that say, oh, Thursday night, recite this one. Friday, recite this. When you're doing this a'mal, recite that. Because recitation of Quran was supposed to become part and parcel of my culture. A household where the recitation of the Quran is not part and parcel of the household and of the culture is going to struggle. Because then when you have to prefer that Quran over other things that you're taught in society, it's going to be very difficult. It's possible. Not saying if someone doesn't do this, they're doomed and, all of this. No, I'm not one to, paint things in this dark way. No. But we already are being bombarded with so many temptations. I want to give my family the best possible chance they have to embrace Islam and to act on Islam. That's my duty as a father, your duty as a mother, whatever the case might be. Of those elements that the Prophet brought forth for us are the adhkar that we have. Why do you think the Prophet has so many narrations and the Ahl Bayt? They say, oh, when you're going to the bathroom, say this dhikr. When you're leaving, say this dhikr. Yes? When someone sneezes, say this dhikr. Now, if we sneeze in the house and my son, my daughter says, God bless you, instead of Alhamdulillah or Ghafarallahu lana wa lakum or Yaghfirullahu lakum, whatever the case may be, it's not the end of the world. But is he being brought up with that Islamic culture? This is just an example, of course, yes? These adhkar, they're supposed to build an atmosphere in your household. Then why all of these adhkar? Number 4, of those elements was the element of dua. Dua was supposed to become part and parcel of our day-to-day culture, in our day-to-day lives. These are the elements that build religious culture. When this becomes, brothers and sisters, the default in my household, it's not a problem if every now and then my child engages with non-religious customs, non-religious practices within the boundaries that we already mentioned. Yes, it's not going to be end the world. Some people think the Islam expects you and I to sit in our own little hole, isolate ourselves, never ever talk about anything non-religious. No, make this the default, make this the primary culture in your household. Sure, your child will be able to maneuver other cultures and customs too. It's not going to be a problem. But this has to be the primary element. Of those elements that the Prophet brought forth for us was dress code. Dress code has a deep impact. There are studies done that when the father dresses in a particular way, when the mother dresses in a particular way, what type of impact it has on the confidence of the children in practicing their faith. It has a major impact. The a'yad that we have, the celebrations that we have, the commemorations that we have, this was also part of our Islamic culture. It's not wajib to attend all of them, but it's part and parcel of our Islamic culture. Living simple lives is part of Islamic culture. Now, if this person goes and he goes a little overboard, is it haram and this and that? No, not necessarily. But you want this to be the dominant idea in your household. You don't want the dominant idea in your household to be, let's spoil this person, spoil that person. Of those elements, brothers and sisters, that you find is becoming very dominant in today's world, oversharing. This doesn't mesh with Islamic values. It's not haram. It doesn't mesh with Islamic values. Now, mashallah, people, every single thing, they have to put it out for thousands of people to see it. So now this brother and sister, alhamdulillah, God has blessed them with a successful marriage. So instead of keeping it between themselves, now they have to put it out for the whole world. Oh, our anniversary has come around. When I saw your eyes the first time, it reminded me of when we met and I found our soulmate. Baba, this is for you guys. This relationship is between you and him and her and whatever the case might be, not between you and 6,000 other people. Oversharing, brothers and sisters, this influencer culture that we have nowadays, that every little thing we have to let other people know about it. No, and then there are sometimes, unfortunately, people who may not know very much. They say, but Shaykh, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, every little thing happens in my life, I should tell the whole world. Yaqub alayhi salam, when Yusuf came to him, he saw a dream. That was the biggest ni'mah of all. When he saw that dream that he was going to become a prophet, the first thing Yaqub told him, he said, لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك. He said, don't you go around sharing this dream with others. Yusuf should have turned around and said, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. I need to tell everybody. This culture of oversharing, this doesn't mesh with Islamic values, brothers and sisters. A lot of what you see on social media doesn't mesh with Islamic values. And of those elements, brothers and sisters, that the Prophet brought to us, that's supposed to become part of our Islamic culture, is Islamic manners, adab, etiquettes. They're not wajib. And if anyone tries to make them wajib and points to someone who's not abiding by them and say, you're a bad person. No, that's an extreme. But generally, it needs to have a place in our households. It needs to have a place within my family. Islamic etiquette is very important. The words I use, the way I speak. And this is why, brothers and sisters, you find one of the special companions of our beloved third Imam only ended up in the camp of the third Imam, some scholars say, because of the adab that he had, because of the manners that he had. He could have opened his mouth and said some nonsensical things, but that adab and those manners held him back. And that little thing became the means of his salvation. And that is none but Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. Let us take our hearts, brothers and sisters, to those stations that Imam al-Hussein is going through before he comes closer and closer to the plains of Karbala. The narrations tell us that as Imam al-Hussein was coming closer and closer to Kufa, now he saw from far away an army that was approaching him. This was a smaller army compared to the army that was going to come on the 6th or 7th of Muharram and was going to join. The army of Sham was a lot bigger than this smaller army. But this was the army of Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. And he says, I came closer and I saw Hussein from far away. I had teachings and commands to make sure that Hussein does not move in any other direction. And the narration says every time Imam al-Hussein wanted to move left or right, Hurr would stop him and his army would stop him. This is the ghurba of Imam al-Hussein. This is the loneliness of Imam al-Hussein. Imagine what Hussein would go back to these tents, to this rest of this caravan, and tell his women and children. Imagine Hussein going back and saying, we can't go here, we can't go there. Why? Why, father? Why, uncle? Well, because this army doesn't allow us. The masa'ib of Hussein have already begun. Every single time Hussein is feeling more and more confined, more and more imprisoned. But how did Hussein treat the army of Hurr ibn Yazid? The narration says when he saw the army coming from far away, he told the caravan to stop. When Hurr and his people came closer, the narration says the first thing the Imam offered to them was what? It was water. The Imam took water that he may have needed himself down the road, and he began to give water to each and every one of the army and the troops of Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. The narration says one of the troops of Hurr, he says, I was part of this army of Hurr. When we came and joined Imam al-Hussein and we stopped him from moving anywhere else, he says, I was all the way in the back. He began giving out water from the front, even to some of the horses and the animals as well. And then the narration says, it came to my turn. He handed the mashk to me. He handed this water skin to me. He asked me to drink from it. I began to drink from it, but it was difficult to hold this mashk. It was difficult to hold this water skin. The water was pouring here and there. He came and held the water skin for me. And he said, let me hold this water skin and this mashk for you so that you can easily drink from the water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. This same army continues until the 2nd of Muharram. Hurr hears that now he has to stop Hussein. And the letter specifically said, you stop Hussein in an area where there is no water. You stop Hussein in an area that is a barren land. There are no plants. There are no trees. There is no water. We want to pressure Hussein and his family as much as we can. The narration says in these days, Hurr was constantly going back and forth with himself. Is there a way to negotiate with Hussein? And he would go and speak to Umar ibn Sa'd and come back and go and come back until Umar ibn Sa'd finally told him, this is the end of it. We're going to put an end to this. We will kill Hussein and all of the other men in this caravan and in this camp. It finally came, brothers and sisters, to the 10th of Muharram. Then Hurr found in front of himself a situation where he didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, the narration says they saw Hurr. He is starting to shiver a bit. His hands are starting to tremble. They turned to him. They said, you're the commander. You're not supposed to be fearful. You're supposed to be the bravest out of all of us. He said, yes, but I see in front of myself hellfire and heaven, and I will not remain on the side of hellfire. And immediately Hurr made his way to the other side. This part was a side of victory. He made his way to the other side, but the moment he entered into these tents, maybe Hurr saw some of these women and children, yes? Maybe he saw some of these young children that were thirsty for water now, maybe for a couple of days. Imagine the guilt that Hurr had on his face. Imagine the regret he had on his face. But then all of a sudden he saw Hussein walking out with this smile on his face. Oh Hussein, these are your women and your children. These are the people that you care about the most. And this is Hurr who stopped them from drinking water. But Hussein came out with a smile. He said, what did you come for, Hurr? Hurr turns to him. He says, I've come. Hal ila tawbatin min sabil. Is there any way back for me? Is there any way for me to come back and change things? And maybe Hussein was thinking to himself, there's no way for you to bring water for my women and children. But that's okay, Hurr. You still have a place in my caravan. You still have a place in my camp. The narration says Hussein then embraced Hurr in him and started to hug him and started to kiss him. Imagine maybe Hurr in these moments is crying because he knows what he did. Oh Allah, on this night we want to return back to you the way Hurr returned back to the camp of Hussein on that day. The narration says when the battle began and slowly the companions of Hussein went towards the battlefield, of the first who went was none but Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. What else was he gonna do? Wait there and see these women and children who are thirsty? Hurr couldn't take this anymore. The narration says he went to the battlefield. He fought very bravely. When he was struck and he fell down from his horse, he called out to Hussein, and Hussein ran towards him, and Hussein sat beside him. And as he was breathing those final breaths, Hussein turned towards him and said, Anta al-Hurr, you are the free one, kama sammatka ummuk, the same way your mother had named you the free one. And Hussein begins to ease the wounds of Hurr as he takes his final breaths. We tell to Hussein on this day, Ya Aba Abdullah, at least you were there when Hurr was on the ground and he was taking his final breaths. Ya Aba Abdullah, who will be there for you? Who will be there when you are in the maqtal? Who will be there when Zainab is looking from Tell Zainabiyya and she's looking upon your body and unspeakable things are happening to you and there is no one to ease your pain. There is no one to ease your wounds. There is no one to sit with you in those final moments. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let us take our hearts to the plains of Karbala, offer our salams to our beloved third Imam. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين. One more time. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل.
महफूज काफिला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है महफूज काफिला है عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ اس نوری کارواں میں نوری اماریاں ہیں نوری اماریوں میں نوری سواریاں ہیں نوری سواریاں ہیں سر پر علم کھلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ نامحرموں کا مجمع ہٹ ہٹ کے ہے گزرتا پہرے میں باوفا کے طے ہو رہا ہے رستہ طے ہو رہا ہے رستہ کیا شان و دبدبا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ عباس جیسا بھائی سالار کارواں ہے بولے حسین مجھ کو پھر کوئی غم کہاں ہے پھر کوئی غم کہاں ہے ہر غم کی یہ دوا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور بلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ زینب حیا کی ملکہ کلثوم اور رقیہ لیلا رباب فروا کبرا سکینہ فضا کبرا سکینہ فضا ہر بی بی باردہ ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ اصغر سے کھیلتی ہے خوش ہے بہت سکینہ جب چاہتی ہے سونا ہے بابا جاں کا سینہ ہے بابا جاں کا سینہ غم سے ناشنا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے مل کے سب ماتم شبیر کریں مل کے سب ماتم شبیر کرے مل کے سب ماتم شبیر کرے मिलके सब मातमे शब्बीर करे दिल बदिल सीना बसीना करबला तामीर करे सब मातमे शब्बीर करे मिलके सब मातमे शब्बीर करे ये मातम पहचान हमारी इस पे जान कुर्बान हमारी जिसमें यही ये जान हमारी ये मातम है शान हमारी कहता है ईमान हमारा सारे जवानों पीर करे के सब मातमे शब्बीर करे मिलके सब मातमे असगर तेरी प्यास का मातम अकबर का अब्बास का मातम हसरत का और यास का मातम हासिल है एहसास का मातम लाख ज़माना हमको रोके हम इसकी तशहीर करें सब मातमे शब्बीर करें मिलके सब मातमे शब्बीर करें ये मातम मजलूम का मातम ज़हरा के मासूम का मातम पानी से महरूम का मातम तेग तले हलकूम का मातम इस मातम से हम जो चाहे वक्त को जंजीर करें के सब मातमे शब्बीर करें मिलके सब मातमे शब्बीर करें या हुसैन 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 अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद व अज्जिल फरजहु.
Brothers, if you could kindly sit down and we'll begin the Q&A shortly. Ahsant.
Brothers, if you can please be seated, we'll start the Q&A in just a moment. Salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Oh, you have one. Okay. Sounds good.
Salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We have limited time today because Salah time is approaching, so I'll run through a couple of quick fire questions. Inshallah, we'll get about 10 minutes or so. And then obviously many of you will have submitted Slido questions on the poll. If you struggle to find the password, please let me know after the program and I can share that with you. And it's also on the poster that we've shared via the Hujjat WhatsApp page as well. So for those questions that we can't answer, inshallah, we'll have one or two more of these in the coming days. And obviously Al-Hadi Youth have also organized a Q&A session on the weekend as well. So inshallah, that will be another opportunity to ask as many questions as possible for Shaykh while we have the benefit of having him here today. Just to start, Salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So question one, should the Shia seek to establish political influence in Western societies to advance our own interests and rival the influence of certain other groups? And how is the best way to do this?
Yeah, so that's a simple question, but takes a very long discussion to get into. So I'll give you the very basic theoretical answer to it. Now, how it plays out in practice is a really long discussion. We deal with this probably more, or maybe you guys deal with it more here in the UK than us in the States, but in our own way, we deal with it in the States, right? In theory, if I can get involved while holding on to my values, should I do that? Yeah, in theory, that's the answer. You're supposed to do that. Because a Muslim's supposed to bring about islah. Like this is in the wasiyah of the third Imam, yes? إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. So in theory, yes. In practice, it gets very, very complicated and, dare I say, very messy. So that's when, because this idea of holding on to my values is really not, in the dominant societies that we find today, it's not possible in terms of doing it in 100%. It's really not possible. So then I have to sit down and see, okay, well, what am I okay with compromising on while holding on to other values that I deem more important to be preserved in society? But that needs religious guidance. Because I'm not an expert on Islam, yes? So if I want to play that role, I have to be able to look at Islam and say, okay, this is the most important thing for Islam. Then this, then this, then this, then this, then this. I have to have this hierarchy, right? And the average person may not have that because they may not be an expert in the faith, yes? And that would include myself too. Yes, some things are pretty clear. You can give preference to them over other things. But there's bigger things you're really not sure. So this is where it gets very messy and very complicated. So the answer in theory is yes, but in practice, it gets quite messy. In theory, if I can bring about something that either creates less evil or creates a positive impact, am I supposed to do that? Yes. Some Maraja say you have to do it. Okay? Some Maraja say you can do it. That's the ruling of the Maraja. But in terms of identifying who's who, that's where things get very messy. Our election that's coming up in the States, I mean, who knows? Like, what's a better situation, you know? This is very difficult. That comes to implementing it, though. Yes.
Hassan, thank you. Next question. Can the idea of a Western custom really be a distinct category? After all, even the way that we practice Islam here in the West would be a Western custom.
Yes, so when I said Western customs, I'm talking about customs that don't necessarily have any roots within our faith, right? So Valentine's Day, for example, this is a purely Western custom. Yes, there are customs that you take and then you give it an Islamic touch. That's possible. And those are customs that you would say at that point have become somewhat Islamic because now you've given it some Islamic touch. But of course, even in that scenario, engaging with them has to be done in the framework that we talked about. I won't repeat the whole lecture, yes? So that's what we mean by Western customs. I'm not a fan of speaking of Western customs or Eastern customs or any non-religious customs in this evil way. You know, sometimes people say, what is this non-religious customs? No, like the questioner is asking, we practice Islam always within a culture, yes? So Islam didn't take this approach of just isolate yourself, stay away, don't engage in it. No. The first Imam, he told Malik Ashtar, when Malik Ashtar was heading out, Nahjul Balagha, letter number 53, he told him, وَلَا تَنْقُضْ سُنَّةً صَالِحًا. When you go there to Egypt, yes, don't you come and dismantle the good customs that people already have. They're not necessarily religious customs, but they're good customs. They push the right values. The Imam told him, don't go, وَلَا تَنْقُضْ سُنَّةً صَالِحًا عَمِلَ بِهَا صُدُورُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. That people before you have acted upon. Now, keep those customs there, yes? So we just have to be selective, thoughtful, number one. Number two, as I mentioned, we should never allow non-religious customs, especially those that have no relationship with the faith at all, yes, to become the dominant culture, yes? Things that have some religious customs, some religious roots, that should be the dominant. That's what my children should be used to, okay? Yes, I'll add this before we move on. People are very worried, and inshallah the night we talk about Islamic schooling, we're going to touch on this a lot more. People are very worried about raising their children in a bubble. I'm here to tell you as a father myself, if your child grows up and they have a phone, they're not in a bubble. It's like impossible to keep them in a bubble anymore. You're worried about the wrong thing. Your child can no longer even be raised in a bubble technically, even if you wanted to. That's not the challenge most of us have in our families, in our communities. The challenge we have is we're overexposed to non-religious customs. That's the main thing I'm supposed to be worried about. This idea of my child is going to be isolated, then later on he's going to go to school. He's not going to be able to hold a conversation with anybody. Trust me, your child, your son, your daughter, especially if he ends up with a phone at one point or another, he knows everything about anything that's happening in the world. This is the world that we live in. It's not like when we were kids or like previous generations, you could raise your child in a bubble. It was possible. It's really not possible anymore. So this idea, I think, is less of a concern. The bigger concern is being overexposed to this non-religious customs. Yes.
Hassan, thank you. Particularly pertinent question for tonight. So with the Eurozone going, does watching football matches or supporting a football team count as a Western
Watching
custom?
football is like mustahab at this point. Yes, kidding, of course. Yeah, these are non-religious customs. What values do they promote? Nothing. It's just entertainment. So Islam has no problem. Yes, but that should not be dominant 24/7. If that's what my child is growing up 24/7, and he doesn't have much exposure to Islamic culture, then that's going to become a problem. I'll give you an example. He's watching these sports, and then Salat time comes around. Now, watching the sports is not a problem, but Salat time came around. He has to understand that now you got to take a break. It's okay. You don't have to watch the Euros 90 minutes. You can watch 70 minutes, yes, and still be fine. Okay, it's halftime break. Go pray now. Pray on time. You see, this is where the nuance comes into the picture, yes? So these things, definitely no problem with them at all. We just have to be thoughtful about how we engage with them.
Ahsant. Related to the lecture yesterday, so God's judgment.
Is England still in there, though? Yes, so that's why you guys still have hope. Still remember the 6-2 that you guys did to us. Was it 6-1 or 6-2 in the World Cup to Iran? 6-1.
We stopped counting, I think, Shaykh.
Yes, stop. Oh, man. That was a burn. Go ahead.
God's judgment of non-Muslims. What judgment or punishment are there for reverts and their crimes and transgressions before accepting Islam?
Islam said, the hadith of the Prophet, Al-Islamu yajubbu, Islam removes everything that came before it. Your Islam is your tawbah, so if you're a revert, I wouldn't even worry about that. You worry about from here onwards. And then the narrations say when you do tawbah, just for the average person, even a person who's born Muslim, when you do tawbah, the narration says, ista'nif, start over again. It's like you're born again. So we don't have to worry too much about the past. If I've done true repentance, then I worry about the future and the rest of my life. Yeah.
Another one on Western customs. Opinion on the scholars' opinions on celebrating birthdays specifically.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think this is a bigger heated debate in the Sunni school of thought, because in the Sunni school of thought, their take on what would constitute bid'ah and what would not constitute bid'ah is the standard is very different from what constitutes bid'ah for us. Okay, but generally they take a little bit more of a literal approach, especially in the Hanbali school of thought. Okay, in the Ash'ari school of thought and the Maturidi school of thought, and they're a little bit more relaxed on this issue. On the Hanbalis are a little bit more firm on this issue, right? So for us personally, I don't see what the problem is, as long as, again, you can give it an Islamic touch, engage in moderation. It shouldn't be a problem at all. Yeah.
Okay. The last two questions. One of them over here is, you mentioned Adhkar in the lecture today, but are there any specific dhikrs or meditations from the Quran that you would recommend to activate souls to awaken more in this time of deception?
Well, the dhikr that the Quran, the narrations have recommended for us a lot, maybe more than any other dhikr, is recitation of Quran. But we don't even do this in our communities or in our families. Unfortunately, it's not a thing. So what greater dhikr is there going to be than a dhikr that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the words for it? These other ahadith that we read, yes, these are words from the Ahl Bayt. And sometimes they're quoting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is literally words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the strongest dhikr that you can possibly say, and there's 600 pages of it. So you can take your choice and your pick at what part of it you want to engage in, yes? But we don't. And then we look for other adhkar. Sure, there are other adhkar too. There's many of them. These du'as that we have, there's so many of these du'as that we have, yes? Any one of them that you like, that you take a liking in, everyone has their own favorite one, yes? Sit with that one, become acquainted with that one. There's no problem with that. But beyond these adhkar, Quran is something supposed to be constantly. There's nothing that will bring more light to your soul than the verses of the Quran. But unfortunately, it's not, part and parcel of our lifestyles and part and parcel of our culture. It needs to be. Yes.
Okay, one on Jamaat namaz, which you mentioned earlier.
Are we almost done with the questions?
There's one, last one.
I don't think this has ever happened in a Q&A.
We're almost done with the question. The one, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
There are many questions on the slido which we won't unfortunately get to today.
Yes.
Jamaat namaz, given time of namaz is approaching, it's very important in Islamic culture. But why do we not allow joining in Jamaat fully with Sunnis?
Well, I'm not sure where that came from, because Ayatollah Sistani says you can join. I'm sure he would encourage you to join. Yes, Ayatollah Sistani's ruling is a technical point. He says that when you join the Fatiha and the Ikhlas, you're supposed to recite quietly to yourself. Other Maraji like Ayatollah Khamenei, I believe Ayatollah Makarim, if I'm not mistaken, they say no, you join. As long as you're joining with the intention of promoting unity, you join as a normal salat. You don't have to make up for it later, nothing of that sort. So I'm not sure, where this concept came from. And it is unfortunately a little bit of a shame that if you were to go to an airport, for example, to pray, or another masjid, and both schools of thought are at fault for this, is that if a Sunni person is praying, typically a Shia person will not join that jama'ah. And if a Shia person is praying, that Sunni person will not join that jama'ah. So this is a problem. Now, you might say, well, that Sunni person, whatever fatwa he's following or whatever ruling he's following doesn't allow him. Okay, that's his fiqh. But your marja, look into his ruling. If he's one of these two that I mentioned, he does allow this. And I'm sure they would encourage it. So why not? This is a problem we have, that we're very hesitant, on these issues. And of course, the split between the Shia school of thought and the Sunni school of thought is a big discussion. There's a lot of misconceptions in this regard, yes? And that's something that takes a lot of conversations. If you come across a colleague at work or a classmate at college or whatever the case might be, before trying to tell him, when you're praying, you're supposed to put a turba down, or before telling him, no, don't put your hands up like this way, you have to have more fundamental conversations about who speaks on the behalf of the Prophet, what did the Prophet do when he was alive. These discussions are far more foundational. And then there's a lot of misconceptions. And the average Sunni has a lot of misconceptions about Shiism. And the average Shia has a lot of misconceptions about Sunnism. There's a lot of misconceptions. Typically in this conversation, the Shia side assumes it knows more. Maybe a little bit because the other side is a majority, yes? But it's not even close to what that person assumes in terms of how little of misconceptions he has. No, you have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the Sunni school of thought. I promise you that, because for the average person I've conducted conversations with, they will say things that if you go up to the Sunni scholar, not to the average person, the Sunni scholar will say, no, this is what we believe. Oh, but I thought this is what you believe. I remember having, that was the last question? Is how much time we have to salat?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, so I'll add this. So I was having conversation with a very well-known Sunni scholar. He's world-renowned, well-known, And he said, yes, the Shia, they believe that the 12th Imam is going to return. The main reason why they believe and await him and do intidhar for him is because, and he said this publicly in a lecture, he said it's because the Shia believe that when he comes back, he's going to come back to get rid of the Khulafa again, right? He's going to kill them again, or whatever. This is what that speaker was saying, okay? He said this is the number one reason why the Shia await for the 12th Imam. Us Sunnis, we await the Mahdi. They don't really await it, but we anticipate that when he comes, what will he bring? Adlan wa qista. Peace and justice to everyone, yes? So I had an opportunity to sit down with him, and I said, where did you get this from? He said, well, isn't this what you guys believe in? I said, no, this is not the main reason why people wait for the 12th Imam to come. Go ask any Shia. This probably will not even be the first top 10 things that he'll even mention to you. He says, so what is the reason for it? I said, we have the same exact wording you have in your narrations. Your narrations say qistan wa adla. Our narrations say qistan wa adla. I said, oh, okay. So I said, where did you get this from? He said, I think I saw a narration in Al-Kafi about this. I said, there's probably a narration in Al-Kafi about this, but not every narration for us means that we believe in it. That's a little bit more of a Sunni paradigm, yes? Dynamic than it is for us. And then on the Shia side, we have a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to the Sunni side as well. So on that side, I would say you have to have a lot more foundational discussions before trying to pinpoint fiqhi differences and, oh, you don't have a turba, and unfortunately these discussions online get so ugly. This one says you're the son of this and this is the son of this, and you don't even want to engage in this. I posted one time on social media a clip about how Sunnis and Shias should not mock each other. And then in the comments, they were mocking each other. So that's our situation. We'll end with that, inshallah.
أحسن صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
Yeah, sure. Oh, Shaykh's doing the Marthia. You're going to do this second mic.
There's a cable over there.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's doing it then.
Ah, okay. There's a cable over there. Make sure Smack plugs it in.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله ربي وأتوب يا محسن قد أتاك المسيء وقد أمرت المحسن أن يتجاوز عن المسيء أنت المحسن وأنا المسيء فبحق محمد وآل محمد صل على محمد وآل محمد وتجاوز عن قبيح ما تعلم مني الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته بحول الله وقوته. أقوم وأقوم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بئية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وعليه السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته بحول الله وقوته. أقوم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته. أقوم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لعلم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أتلوه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجل في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري أفي سرح هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا ربي رزق القال واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا مأخذه قريبا، ولا تؤنني بطلبي ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجزء عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن الرسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وانيس النفوس ايها المدفون بارض توس، السلام عليك يا سلطان العرب والعجم علي بن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الأسر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وزهورك، والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتيه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.